After several years of promotion and blackfishing allegations, Wicked is finally here. Like, the film has been heavily promoted since 2019. And on top of that, we had to deal with Cynthia Erivo's questionable promotion tactics with the fan art debacle. And I also want to dial back with the aggressive promotion of this film because, man, Wicked was just promoted everywhere. Like, you saw it at the Olympics, you saw it at the AMC theaters, you saw it at your local Target. You saw it everywhere, promoting this movie nonstop. Universal just completely went super hard with the promotion of this film, and I don't really blame them, honestly, because this is their big tentpole. And honestly, don't get me started with Ariana Grande dating live action SpongeBob, or the time when Lea Michele was supposed to be one of the leads of this film, even though she can't read. Oh yeah, and by the way, the movie also surpassed the military's budget. So yeah, we're in insanity right now. But actually, you know what? Let's just throw it back to Future Jack to see what he thinks about Wicked. So yeah, this is Future Jack coming back to you in the future. I saw Wicked 2 days ago, and I kind of want to go super deep into the film since I saw it finally. So let me just reiterate some of the last points that I made, well, in 30 seconds. But basically, I haven't seen the play before. I'm being marketed it as a general audience member, so I don't know anything about Wicked aside from the popular songs in the film and some of the plot points, mostly because it's a prequel of The Wizard of Oz. But yeah, so I'm gonna go super deep into the film. I'm gonna try not to spoil the movie, obviously, because the movie just came out. But I want to go super deep into the reasons why I think this movie is pretty good. So yeah, let's get into it. So as someone who hasn't seen the play before, this is a really interesting kind of perspective because I'm going into the movie, expecting some good ass songs. I'm expecting Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo to belt their voices together, and what I got was exactly what I wanted, but a little bit more in the perspective of the general audience member. So let me kind of reiterate, go back to some of the reasons why I think this movie works on its own, because this movie is split into two parts. The first part ends with the big musical number, which is Defying Gravity, and then the second part, which is going to come out next year, will continue the story and the transformation of the Wicked Witch of the West. So let's really get into the weeds of the movie. So starting with Ariana Grande, her character Glenda is basically, the Wicked Witch of the East, or, the Good Witch, basically, from The Wizard of Oz. But before that, she appears in the beginning of the movie as the symbol for hope. And it's basically the retread of the ending of The Wizard of Oz, where you see, the Munchkins and everybody celebrating the death of the Wicked Witch. But once everything's going crazy and the crowd's, cheering on, somebody in the crowd asks Glenda a question about if she had a relationship with, the Wicked Witch, friendships. And I really enjoyed the first kind of half of the movie, especially mostly the university parts. I was struggling a little bit with it in the beginning with the wizard school and it being kind of Harry Potter light. But then something happens in the middle of the first kind of quarter of the film where you realize that some of the animals are losing their voices, and that kind of leads into the Wicked Witches, or Elphaba. Sorry, pronunciations are going to be really bad. But basically, she figures out that these animals are losing their voices, and that causes her to kind of rise up against tyranny and the hierarchy of authoritarian. And that's kind of the basis of the story, where you start to see cracks inside of the land of Oz. And let me start by saying Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo, they both play these characters really damn well, especially Ariana Grande. I was not familiar with her game, straight up. I knew her only from the Nickelodeon shows on SNL a couple weeks ago, and she killed it. And a lot of people have kind of like speculated that her role in this movie is Oscar worthy, and for the first like 10-15 minutes of people telling me that like, oh, she's Oscar worthy, I expected it to be like, oh nah, you're lying, like this is not it, like she's not like Oscar worthy. The moment she starts like doing like the classic like operatic whistle tones that you normally like hear from like a lot of Ariana Grande's like vocals in her songs, like that's when I was just like, oh shit, like she's about to fucking cook. And she does cook like throughout the entire movie with her comedic chops and just like everything around her character. And her character basically starts out like a mean girl. She's just completely being mean to everybody around her, and like people are eating it up also as well. And then Alphaba appears and she tries to be a bitch about Glenda trying to like become like the best witch, and the headmaster, played by Michelle Yeoh, is fond of Alphaba instead of Glenda, and that starts the rivalry. And then eventually the film kind of closes in and you see Glenda lose her kind of like meanness, and she becomes friendly to Alphaba, and then they become friends. And that's like the moment where the film blossoms, and it kind of gets pretty long to get to that point where you have to kind of like sit through the university stuff, you have to sit through the magic, you have to sit through the light comedy bits, but then it feels earned, especially when the prince appears, played by Jonathan Bailey. Once he appears, the movie continues to like create like a euphoric like high, and after that, like I was like seated, I did not want to leave, and the rest of the movie turned into like this really like fun and vibrant film. Now the thing is that this film is also 3 hours long, nearly 3 hours long, and the film is also split into two parts. The first thing is that like the runtime for me felt kind of overlong, overstuffed. There was a lot of exposition, a lot of stuff happening in between that kind of like padded the runtime out. But then it does feel earned, especially near the last third, where both of our characters go to Oz and finally meet the Wizard of Oz, played by Jeff Goldblum, who's just basically Jeff Goldblum, to be real. But after that, once that happens, the film really like ramps up. And then you get to the actual meat of the movie, where you see the cracks of Alphaba becoming the Wicked Witch, and how everybody around her just treated her like shit, and she's just like at a breaking point. And once she does finally do like the big musical number, Defying Gravity, that's when you realize like this shit goes fucking hard. Like I was like seated at that point in time, like once Jonathan Bailey appears, and then just the movie going like up and up and up and up. And from there, like that really like grabs my attention. But yeah, like all the performances are really good. I think Michelle Yeoh and Jeff Goldblum are kind of like the weaker links in the movie, but that's probably because like they don't have too much to do. They're kind of just like a setup kind of thing where they're like in the background sometimes. They have some moments, but like they're also like setups for like, the second part. And you can kind of say the same thing with Ethan Slater's character and Alphaba's sister, younger sister, which I heard like they also have like a bigger part in the second half of the second film, and obviously the second part of the play. But I felt a lot of emotions throughout the entire movie. I was really enjoying a lot of the musical numbers. I'm a really big musical fan. I grew up watching musicals. I was in like a couple musicals when I was young. So I know how like musicals go and how they're structured and how like all the theatrics play out in real time. And I think John M. Chu, he really does a good job making the film palatable for everybody. Especially since this musical is, again, it's a really long musical. You can kind of tell where like it splits from like act 1 to like act 2 to act 3. But you know what? I really enjoyed it. And again, the problems that I do have is coming from like the runtime and just like the university bits in like the first half. But near the end of like those like university bits, I like was really tapped into the narrative. I do also have to say that like I think the thematic of just like believing in yourself and kind of like creating your own person in your own skin is really like universal for like everybody. Universal. Sorry, like my pronunciation today is really bad. Sorry. Um, but like it's universal and like everybody can like understand like being in that moment where you don't feel comfortable in your skin. People are like putting you like shit and you just want to like feel seen. And I think this film is very like great with dealing with that theme. And I also again want to like reiterate Cynthia Erivo's performance in this. I think she's underestimated for like the best actress nomination for the Oscars, and I think that's probably because I think the field is kind of a little bit crazy and kind of like lopsided with some actresses being nominated or going to be nominated for films that are like not in Best Picture and like others that are kind of like in stronger films. But I think she deserves a nomination here because she has a lot of like heavy baggage to play, especially with her backstory, Alphaba, and how like she starts out as a little girl. You see the cracks like going in and out with her like anger, black girl, you know, anger. I don't know why that like usually happens with a lot of like these Hollywood like films with you know, angry black girls. But eventually she does kind of feel whole in the end, and she understands some of the emotions that she's trying to like channel in, and she lets it out in a burst of beautiful singing. And again, I gotta also reiterate Ariana Grande's performance in this. I thought she was just fantastic. She was almost like, I'm trying to like compare it to another supporting actress like musical performance. I think Ariana DeBose is one like comparison that I can really like pin down, because those like two Arianas really like brought like their A game and really like made the film like better and whole throughout the entire like film. And once they like leave the screen, you want more of them. And again, I really enjoyed this. I can't wait for the second part. I'm probably going to be reading like the entire book so I can like know what happens in the second part. But yeah, like I enjoyed it. Again, I have some problems with it with like the runtime and like the first like quarter of the movie, but that kind of like goes out the window once everything is like set up in a fashion that is very like respectable and palatable for me personally. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I gave it a 4 out of 5. Again, Oscar prospects, I'm predicting it for Best Picture. I can see the vision. I don't know if it's going to be like the biggest like populist like Best Picture like nominee right now. I do think Conclave is going to like work for everybody else, especially like the older demographic. But I think this also works because it's a movie that has like a traditional classical musical like vibe. It feels like The Wizard of Oz. It feels like, you know, Sound of Music. It feels like you know, I'm trying to think of another like musical like West Side Story. You know, so it's a lot of those things, and it plays like those like classic vibes. And I also want to like predict it again, you know, for Best Supporting Actress for Ariana Grande. I don't know if I would predict it for Cynthia Erivo. She deserves it, but we'll see. And then sound, maybe visual effects. I had some problems with like the visual effects and the lighting. A lot of people were like clowning on it. It took a while to really like go deep into, you know, the lighting choices in this movie, because it's very either overexposed or some of the lighting is kind of hit and miss. But when the movie continues, you kind of just forget about it, and it's okay. And then, you know, best sound, and then costumes and the set design, like those are also like big like contenders. I think it's gonna do pretty well for like the technical awards nominations. Again, I don't think it'll win yet. I think Dune 2 might have a chance, or even Gladiator 2, which I'll be reviewing pretty soon. But yeah, like I really enjoyed it, and I gotta like give my hats off to like John M. Chu. His career has been just like been completely up and up for the past couple of years. I really respected him for doing In the Heights during the COVID year. I thought like that was like a near masterpiece. It's one of my favorite musicals. And he also did like Step Up 3D, which is like underrated. That movie like is low key cooking. And he also did Crazy Rich Asians, which really like made me pay attention to his game. I don't know if he'll be nominated for Best Director. The field is really like packed and locked in. But if they really want to go super hard on Wicked, then, you know, you can see it. But I don't see it right now. But yeah, like that's my review for Wicked. I want to be reviewing Gladiator 2 pretty soon. But yeah, that's basically it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Peace out.